So in this video, we're going to be looking at exact values of related angles again. This time, we just have a focus on radians. So again, you should have learned these by now. So if you don't know them, you need to learn them. And at the start of the last video on exact values of related angles, where we looked at degrees, I reminded you of the graphs of the trigonometric functions and also the cast diagram. So that will be quite useful here as well. So example 1, we want to find the exact value of cos 7 pi over 4. So like before, we'll look at the graph firstly and then we'll look at the cast diagram, and you can choose whichever method you feel most comfortable with. So 7 pi over 4 is around here. So you can see cos 7 pi over 4 is there. And you might be able to see that that is the same as pi over 4. So cos of pi over 4, because it is the same distance away from 2 pi here and here. So those distances are both pi over 4. You might need to use a cast diagram for this, which is absolutely fine. So starting at 0. Now I've got 0, pi and 2 pi. Now you'll remember in the first lesson about radian measure, we were counting in increments of pi over 4, and this is to try and help you here as well. So instead of pi and 2 pi, I am going to express those as 4 pi over 4 and 8 pi over 4. So that lets us deal with the fractions a wee bit easier. So 0, and we go all the way around to 7 pi over 4, which is here. Remember, it's always the distance away from the horizontal, which is pi over 4 in this case. So it's 8 pi over 4 minus 7 pi over 4, which is 1 pi over 4. Now, in the fourth quadrant here, cos is positive, so that means that cos of 7 pi over 4 is equal to positive cos pi over 4. Okay, sorry, I'm aware I've said pi over 4, I don't know how many times now, but just to make sure, obviously I need to say it so you know what you're doing. So cos pi over 4 is the same as 1 over root 2, which is our final answer here. So again, if you pause the video at this point and take down the example and the working. Okay, welcome back folks. So we'll have a look at example 2. And this time we want to find the exact value of tan 2 pi over 3. So as always, we'll have a look at the graph first. So here is tan of 2 pi over 3. Again, maybe not quite as easily spotted this time, but it is the same as tan of pi over 3. So you can see, sorry, it's not the same, it's the negative of tan pi over 3, I should have said. So you might be able to see that from the graph, and if not, you can use the cast diagram method as well. So again, I've expressed pi and 2 pi in terms of the pi over 3s. So again, that's why we were counting in increments of pi over 3s before in a previous video. So 2 pi over 3, starting at 0, comes to about here. So 2 pi over 3 away from the horizontal is pi over 3. Now, it's tan, which in this second quadrant here, tan is negative. So it's negative tan pi over 3, which I had from the graph anyway. Now tan of pi over 3, so I'm thinking in my head, I'm never going to write degrees here, but in my head I'm thinking, right, that's tan 60, which is root 3. Okay, so that must be negative root 3 then. So you can never write degrees in a radians question because you will lose marks. So if you're ever going to write degrees, write it at the side and completely score it out or rub it out. Don't ever have degrees sitting in a radians question, or likewise radians in a degrees question, because you will lose marks in an exam. Okay, and you can pause there and copy this down. And finally, example 3. So we want to find the exact value of cos of negative 2 pi over 3. Now, we've not done one like this yet, but I think it did crop up in the exercise for exact values of related angles in degrees. So we just have a wee look at the cos graph. Now, we're used to normally seeing the cos graph between 0 and 2 pi, but remember it does go back to negative infinity as well, so it'll keep going and going and going. So negative 2 pi over 3 is about here. So you can hopefully see, if we move that, it is the same as negative pi over 3. Now, it's maybe not as easily seen when you're jumping across the axis, so it can be quite difficult using the graphs at times. So if we just have a wee look here, and we'll use our cast diagram as well. Now, on the cast diagram this time, we're going negative, so we need to go backwards. So normally we go round this way, so we're going to go backwards this time, so 0, negative 3 pi over 3, negative 6 pi over 3. So our negative 2 pi over 3 comes to about here. And away from the horizontal, that is pi over 3. Now we're dealing with cos, and we're in the third quadrant. Cos is negative in here. So it's negative cos of pi over 3. Now, the fact that this is negative here is nothing to do with the fact that it's negative here. Remember, it depends which quadrant the angle is occurring in, because even though we've got negative angles here and here, these still have positive values on the graph. So just be aware of that. Don't just see a negative and throw a negative in here. Just make sure that you're still doing the correct thing. So cos of pi over 3, in my head I'm thinking that's the same as cos 60 degrees. And I know that cos 60 is a half. And I'm never writing down that 60 degrees. That's just in my head, I'm thinking that. So negative cos pi over 3 is negative a half. So again, pause the video before the screen goes blank and copy this example down before doing the assigned exercise for today.